Okay, so we're ready to install our toilet. I just want to talk a little bit about some of our options here. As you can see, our toilet has been covered up this whole time, and so we're going to go ahead and pop this off. And the reason we covered this is we don't want any grout, any small animals, or anything like that to fall down that hole, because that would have made our installation a little bit harder. And so what you can do here is use a wax seal, and if you're comfortable installing a wax seal, that is totally fine. What we're going to use is the Sani-seal, and so this is a green ring here, and it's not made of wax, which is really nice. And some of the bonuses of it are you can use this multiple times. So if you're working on a house where the homeowner needs the toilet every night, you can actually install the toilet at night after you're done work, and in the morning take it off. And so the other great thing about it is that it's stackable, and so you can stack wax rings and that's fine, but these stack really well as well. So if you have a really deep flange and your floor is really high, then you could stack two of these on top of each other and they would work. The third part that's actually really nice is see how deep it is. This will actually hold your bolts upright, which is probably the hardest part about installing a toilet, is making sure that your bolts stay in the right place. And so this installation is pretty easy right here. We get our bolts out. And so with our toilet bolts, we've got three pieces. We've got the actual bolts right here, and this is kind of like a T-bolt, if you will. It allows us to slip into the hole, and then it won't come out. So we've got that. We've got our plastic washer, retaining washer right here, and if you can see this, the only purpose of this is to help keep your bolt in place, and so they work okay. And we've got the top washer right here, and then we've got the nut. And so, as you can see, this aligns right in here, and then it slides all the way in there. And so this is where our plastic retaining washer comes in. So now, as you can see, I can't lift this up, and that's what we're going for. So I slip this down over top. And I can lift up, and as you can see, that's going to help it stay in place a little bit better. Like I said, they don't work super well. Same thing right here. Slip this in this slot right here, and then pull it forward. So I'm going to be able to slide this down, and it'll keep things in place. And then, like I said, what's really nice about this ring is it will slip down over top of these bolts and hold it up a little bit better. And so initially it comes packaged like this, and for our installation we're going to want to flip this out, and this will actually go into the hole right there. So we're going to line up our bolts, slide it down, and just like that. Make sure it's not catching on anything. And that is it. And so what's really nice about this, like I said, is it's pretty soft, and it can allow us to basically screw up a few times. With the wax, if you set the toilet on and it's not perfect, then when you take it up, you pretty much have to get a new wax ring. And wax rings cost anywhere from $2 to $3, which is nice, because this costs probably $9. And so it is kind of a cost scenario too, but if this is your first time setting a toilet, or if you're one of our volunteers or one of our staff on site, spend the extra $6 on this ring. It'll allow you to bring it up, it'll allow you a little bit more flexibility, and it's just a really good product. So I'm going to go grab the toilet, we're going to set it on, and then we're going to be good to go to tighten our nuts and bolts. Okay, so we're ready to put our toilet in now, and so we have our flange set up, and we're using the Sani-seal, and so it can be pretty heavy, so if you need to get a few helpers in here to help you install the toilet, that is completely fine. The weight combined with lining it up with the bolts can be pretty tough, and so the best place to grip right here is under here, and like they say, lift with your legs, not your back. And then we're just going to align it right on top of our bolts. and make sure that our flange squishes down. So I'm going to lift, look for my bolts. There's one. And two. Okay. So then you want to position it so that your bolts are sticking straight up. And so what's nice is that you can really feel it squish down onto the Sani-seal, and that's exactly what you're looking for. Okay. And so now the biggest thing is whenever you put a new floor in, we can go ahead and we can start tightening this down, but one thing you want to check is to see if it's rocking. Because you don't want to, there you go, you don't want to sit on your toilet and have a rocking toilet. It's bad for the toilet and it's really annoying. And so, so as you can see, we have a little bit of a rock here. And so what we have is some shims. And so we're going to slowly tighten this down a little bit, and then we're going to use our shims to shim the toilet up. And so that can happen a lot with tile floors. Because you have 4 different pieces of tile here, and if they aren't perfectly aligned, then what you're going to do is you're going to get a little bit of rocking. With vinyl floors, with wood floors, it doesn't happen as much, but with tile floors, it happens quite a bit. So I'm going to start by installing our washers and our bolts right down on top. And then I'll get this on. So like I said at first, you just want to do it so it's hand tight. And the biggest thing here is not over tightening these, because you don't want to over tighten this and actually break the porcelain. So I'm going to do this one on this side. Just hand tight. And as you notice, the bolts are probably too long. And so what we're going to need to do later is come back with a hacksaw, with a Dremel, with an oscillating tool, and actually cut these bolts to be shorter. So that's not a problem. It's just something you need to be aware of, that these bolts are too long, and they're meant to be too long. They're meant to fit a bunch of different types of toilets. So got that one tight, hand tight. I can come back here, tighten this one, hand tight. So that's going to help a little bit with the rocking, but by no means will it do everything. So, as you can see, yep, we still have the rocking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my shims, and I'm going to grab a wrench to tighten this down a little bit more. Like I said, just be very careful with tightening this. You don't want to crack the porcelain. And so alternate one side, alternate the other side until it gets tighter. Okay, so I just got my wrench here, and I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. And like I said, we're going to alternate the sides that we tighten. Do this a few times, and then come back and do this one. So this is really more of a feel thing. You're going to feel that your toilet is solid. So you don't want to tighten it too much. Okay, and so now the shimming part. And so it might be best just to sit on it, see if it is moving or rocking. By tightening it down, we definitely helped reduce that rocking. But what I want to show you is just how to use a shim. So I recommend the composite shim. It's not made out of wood, so if it does get wet down here, it's not going to rot. Also, they're really easy to break, which is good. That's what you want. You want them to break easy. And like I said, they're really good for any wet, water-prone areas. And so if we're trying to reduce the rocking in the front, we can slide this shim in like so, and then that'll reduce the rocking in the front. And so you can install these anywhere. Typically you'll see people come around, install quite a few on the front. And that's pretty much it. And what's nice is you can take your knife with these shims and then score them and cut them off. And so you can come in here, and I like to cut a little bit diagonally so that it won't stick out. And so you just come with the knife, cut and score this, and then typically they just snap and break right off. And so what's nice is by doing that diagonal cut, you typically cannot see the shim anymore. And so that is another reason I like these, is because they break pretty cleanly versus a wooden and a cedar shim. They have a tendency to splinter if you don't cut them all the way. So we can go through here, cut our shims off. And then snap and pop it. Same with this. Moral of the story is you don't want a rocking toilet. Okay, and so one thing that I noticed with this is that our bolts weren't, or our washer wasn't really large enough, and so what I'm going to have to do is come back and get a larger washer to go over top of that. Our hole here was kind of oblong and it didn't quite fit. And so now what I'm going to do, and what I always recommend for toilet areas, is to install a bead of silicone around this area. And so for a few reasons, if any water were in here, it wouldn't be able to get out, and then any water wouldn't be able to get down into this area. And so also it helps keep the shims in place, because like I said, we just installed our shims. If we put a bead of silicone down here, then they won't be able to move. They'll almost be embedded into the silicone. And so our last step for actually installing the toilet will be cutting these bolts. So I'm going to go get a Dremel, and we are going to cut these bolts to size. Okay, so as you can see, we did have to add an extra washer here. I just used the old washer. The washers that came with this were A, a little bit small, and B, they were very, very thin, and they just weren't a great washer, so we added another washer. And so I've got my cap here, and what I'm going to want to do is just come and measure this cap and cut it shorter than the cap, and this is where I'm going to want to cut my bolts. And so there are a ton of different ways that you can cut this bolt. You can use bolt cutters, you can use a hacksaw, you can use a Dremel, and we're going to use this oscillating tool right here. The biggest thing is you don't want to damage the porcelain, and so you also don't want to unloose the bolt by any means and ruin that. So got my safety glasses on, and we're just going to come in here, and I've got a metal blade on here, and we're going to cut this. Okay, so we had to switch tools here to a rotary Dremel, and that worked a lot better. Our other Dremel was just shaking the entire nut off and wasn't really cutting well. So that's about it. Okay, so our last step here is to install our supply line, and so ours is just a braided water line, and it just has the hose connection here. So tough part to show is getting back there and actually threading it on, but you just want to hand tighten it and don't over tighten it, because this is just plastic right here. So we're going to do that. We're going to turn the water on, we're going to fill it up and see how it goes. Check for any leaks anywhere. Thanks for watching our video. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you can get updated on all our newest videos. Also, go ahead and click the links below so you can see our social media profiles as well as our website.